Yeah, so I've been hearing about your amps for a long time now, and never really had a chance to try one out until just recently, as you know. You sent me a Bel-Ray to check out, and man, I was blown away. Really, really impressed with it. You know,
Good.
Sounds great, feels great, and there's a lot of stuff online about different builders and different amps, and you hear different things, and you kind of jump to conclusions, but after playing it, screw all the other stuff. I'm blown away by it. Great stuff.
Wow, that's wonderful to hear. Thanks.
So just
Yeah.
want to say that. So how did you get started with building amps?
Um, you know, I don't know about the other guys. For me, it was, I started playing in bands just before high school. I started as a bass player actually, but in college switched to guitar, and it was really through the gear because uh, things were so different back then, pre-internet, but I just did a lot of trading, and you might have done the same thing. You'd get one piece of equipment, you wanted something else, you'd cobble together a trade, maybe a guitar plus an amp equals another
Yeah.
amp, and just did so much of that. And over the years, got more and more interested in tube amplifiers, which I didn't know how they worked, but I loved them. And at one point, this would have been mid 90s, there was a guy who had a repair shop in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and he did some work for me. I had a Marshall, 50-watt Marshall on master volume, and we modified it together a little bit. And then I had a deluxe reverb, and we did some work there. But anyway, I just started hanging out with him and trying to learn what I could, and eventually decided, well, I'll try to build something. And of course, it didn't work at first, but
I've
but
been through the same thing, man.
yeah, I was really after so many hours putting it together, was really disheartened when it didn't work. But you learn a ton by figuring out why it didn't work, and you go from there. So it really just started with playing guitar and in bands, and more interest in the gear as I went along.
That's cool. So did you already have a background in electronics or?
No, not really. I mean, I've been to school for. I went to Purdue for aerospace engineering, though full disclosure, I didn't finish, but I went through most of it. And then I had some school later at UNC for physics, which again didn't quite finish. So the reason why I bring those up is I think I got an education in a way, in sort of analytical way of thinking about things, and
Gotcha.
also not being afraid of math because I had so much math.
Yeah.
Though in reality, you don't really need that much, I think, to that's the beauty of tubes. It's the boy genius. You can just put it together, and it usually works. You got to take it from there to something really good. But so no, I didn't have a background in that stuff. Just a great interest and a practical way of thinking.
Got you. So this place where you sort of internship that they kind of took you in and kind of showed you the ropes, and did you have a lot of questions? Did you get involved with doing repairs and mods and everything after a while, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's exactly what I wanted, but it didn't happen that way. The guy, who was a really nice guy, said that this was sort of a side job to him, and he didn't have time to really have somebody hanging around. And he told me to do what he did when he started, which was build a Fender Champ, a Tweed Fender Champ. Figure out what the schematic meant on your own. Find where you could get the parts, and make it work. And so I did that. That was the beginning.
So was that the amp that didn't work?
That's the amp that didn't work. It's a really simple amp, but I can't even remember why it didn't work. When
Yeah.
you're looking at the schematics for the first time, none of it makes any sense, and you're just hoping.
Yeah, I was telling a story the other day to guy over at Mojo Tone. I was telling him that I tried to build a treble booster. Back in the day, I was taking an electronics class, and it was a final project and everything. And man, I brought it in. The guy's like, "This is really cool, man. Did a great job." And plugged it in. Thing didn't work.
Oh
And
man, that's
so
terrible.
so, so been there, been there. But
Yeah, and for folks at home, I guess a lot of them are our age, but it is so different now with all the kits and the videos you can watch and the parts that are readily available. But even though that made it more difficult for me at the time, that was a great education to set me up, I feel like, for having a company that makes amps, because I became familiar with industrial suppliers for caps and resistors, and there wasn't a Mojo tone then.
Right.
So
Yep.
you had to work a little harder to find all that stuff, but that really helped because later then I could buy. I didn't have to go through a series of middlemen. I was buying directly from these large
Yeah.
distributors.
So as you're going through all these amps and kind of learning the process, are you seeing things where you're like, man, that's a horrible design, or man, I can do that better, you know?
Sometimes, yeah, I'm not. I think what I learned because I started doing a repair after this. Yeah, I was nowhere qualified to do repair, but after I made that first one work, I kind of hung a shingle. I can fix your amp. So
Sure.
that was another education. But yeah, you go through that and you do see some things like, wow, that doesn't look built well. You're wondering how it's even held together. And then other things like the classic fenders, you look at that and you're saying, wow, this was really thought out well. If you read books about Leo Fender, he was such a repairman and he wanted to make it easy to service. You just see that and admire it. But yeah, you do see some oddball 60s amps and even I saw a lot of strange stuff that I couldn't believe was working.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm sure you did, man.
But
So tell me about your new Bel-Ray amp. What was the process for building that amp, and what was the creative process for that?
yeah, that's a good question. I try to come up with an amp about every 2 years, and usually the process in some ways is similar, in which I'll start with some ideas or thoughts about it, and as I prototype, actually building circuits and trying things, it kind of goes back and forth and here and there, and often I'll end up at a really different place than I started, or with if I looked at the end result, I kind of wonder how I got there, and that's really not what I was thinking. But the amp kind of guides me through. I feel like it makes itself over time. But I did start with an idea. We'd had a lot of folks wanting a Vox type amp,
Hmm.
and we've done a few of those in the past, but nothing current. So kind of started thinking of that architecture, the EL84s. I tend to like lower power amps. And a few times in the past, I tried to use the EF86 pentode, but without great results. Sonically great results, but not necessarily usable in a combo results, because can be a very finicky tube because it's so high gain. It's so high gains, so any vibrations, it just wants to pass them on. It's real twitchy.
That's real sensitive, yeah.
Super sensitive, but that's part of its charm too. That's the other side of it. It's got that, I want to go, go, go kind of feel to it, and such a wide bandwidth kind of sound. Anyway, I've used that tube on a few kind of project things I did, but never for an amp. And this may sound silly, but it was always one of the things I wanted to do one day. I thought, well, it didn't work now, but I want to get back to this because it's such a neat sound. So as I was casting about for what to do, I thought, I'm going to spend some time with that EF86 and see if I can make it work for me.
So it all started with making sort of a Vox voiced amplifier and then wanting to work with an EF86.
Right. So those are the building blocks.
Got it. Got it. So,
And
so
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, where did it go from there?
The first stop was where you would go with there, which is just the Vox kind of tone stack and that 86, but really finding a way to have that tube behave itself. And I don't think I'm the first person who tried this using the EF86 deeper in the circuit, but that's what I went with, thinking, well, if there's no gain or little gain after the EF86, there won't be much there to pick up the squirreliness, just the good will come along. So I built a prototype that was very simple, which is that, and it worked. I used it at a few band practices at home, and it was very well behaved with a series of EF86 tubes. So I thought, all right, I'll keep going with this.
Got it. Got it. So you're using that tube in like the V2 slot, right?
Kind of. I don't know if I guess anyone who buys the amp can take it apart and find out exactly how I'm using it. But I think how I'd used it in the past was V1, first input tube, which is really what that tube is designed for. I think it was used in some mic preamps and places where you just need huge gain. And so if you have that and then you have more gain stages after it, I feel like that's where you run into trouble.
Got it. Yeah.
So this is feeding directly feeding a concertina phase inverter, split load, which is there's no gain in that kind of phase inverter. So you've got the EF86, a phase inverter with no gain, and then the power tubes, which do have a little bit of gain, but turns out not enough to cause any microphonic issues.
Got you. Got you. Now with the tube shortage that we ran into, last year before, last few years or so, did you have a problem with that? Did that affect you, or did you have a stockpile of tubes ready to go? Or
Well, that did affect us. I think it affected us like everyone else, where we got really nervous
yeah,
and didn't know what was going to happen. So I did stockpiling is kind of a negative thing, but I did try to buy as many tubes as I could afford to hold them just in case suddenly it stopped. And that was a bit of a strain. I mean, that worry, but also financially thinning out a bit to try to carry that we don't usually carry
yeah,
stores of tubes. Luckily, it didn't really pan out that way. I mean, certainly the prices have almost doubled for a lot of stuff, though they're creeping back down tube wise. But as far as getting things, that really hasn't become a problem. What have you seen?
No, I heard a lot of people kind of complaining about it, a couple of years ago, and talking to different builders, and they were saying that they were stockpiling stuff, and trying different tubes here and there, and just really keeping a close eye on the industry and the market to kind of see where it was going to go. And as you just kind of mentioned, everything kind of panned out. No problems, no issues. Prices are going down or they're stable. Everybody's able to get what they want, and everything is cool. But for a while there, it was kind of crazy. I remember trying to buy tubes myself, and like you said, the prices doubled. Couldn't believe it. It's just crazy. So
Yeah, I don't know if we're out of the woods necessarily because of the Russian war, et cetera, and that's the majority of the tubes being made. Those the other sources kind of stepped it up, I think. Yeah, hopefully it'll remain smooth. With the EF86, people ask about that, but their new sensor makes those. JJ makes those. There's plentiful new old stock in that. I don't think that's going to be an issue. And even with one of our amps, the Super B, which uses a 6BM8, which is a power tube and a preamp tube together.
yeah,
An oddball. That was only one current production source, new sensor in Russia, but those are still coming along, and there's lots of new old stock there. So I don't know. I'm glad that it it didn't get bad. It was okay.
yeah, great, great. So going back to the Bel-Ray, you've got three different modes there. You've got the V mode, the M mode, and the H mode. Can you tell me about those and how that sort of came about?
Sure. So I kind of talked about the power section of that amp with the
Yeah,
EF86, and that tube again has so much flavor and immediacy to it. And I had this sort of V style preamp initially, and we always try to give a lot more value if we can. So
right,
it's
right.
experimenting around with essentially trying to, with a click of a switch, rewire the whole tone section to emulate another type of amp, archetypal British amp. And that between the sort of Voxy and the Marshally thing, that is relatively easy because they are somewhat similar, but the more high wattage kind of vibe, trademark all of those. It's a lot more challenging because it's sort of an oddball setup. The mid range is completely different in a different part of the circuit. Anyway, it was really challenging for a while, but I finally kind of found a way where they could live together and capture not verbatim circuit wise, but the vibe and the kind of juice of each of those.
Got you.
And it's a lot of fun. They sound, as you found out, they sound very different from each other, and they're
Yeah,
all useful.
yeah. When I first went through them, I said to myself, okay, there's something going on with the tone stack, and first I thought, oh well, the tone stack is just kind of changing. But then as I played around with it a little bit more, I said, oh, there's a little bit more going on, with this than than just the tone stack. So
Yeah, it's the gain level does change with those, and because the frequency response of those tone stacks, the way they kind of lay the field is so different, and the way that then interacts with the rest of the amp, it may sound simple. Oh, I'm just switching, but this one little piece, but it's like a soup. You change this one really central chunk, suddenly you got a different soup, and that's what's going on.
right, got you. And by the way, the eight setting is my favorite setting. I played
Really?
that. I said,
Okay.
wow, that's it. I had no
I'm
idea.
glad because, like I say, that was the toughest one to really get in there.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking to myself, man, this is going to be cool. It's going to sound like a Vox, and then I started playing the H and said, wow, this is it. I like this better. And one of the things that I really noticed about all the different modes is that they're very chimey, and of course you're going to get that with EL84s and of course your design and everything. But I was really surprised at the chime and the amp, and it really sounds good. So it sounds fantastic. So great job with that.
Keep on going. No,
Yeah.
some of it too. With each model, I'll try different speakers, and I've got a host of favorite speakers that I'm pretty familiar with. And then, I started thinking about that H setting and looked into Fane speakers and talked to the guy, David Avatar. He's the US
Yep.
distributor for those. And he sent me some to try out and just really, really liked them. And the F25 we're using in the amp is such a perfect mate for that British sound with all the chime. That speaker just has this shimmer that goes on. I mean,
I was gonna bring that up too because I was really impressed with it too. Whenever I get an amp here to review, I usually plug in some of my other amps just to kind of see what the speaker sounds like, and it gives me a really good reference point. And I was blown away with that. I mean, it sounded great with everything that I plugged into it, and I've got some other faint speakers that I use. In fact, I've got an F70, which is a higher
mm-hmm.
wattage speaker, and that's pretty cool. But there's something about that F25 that really just kind of nails everything that I'm looking for in a speaker. So I think it's a great match.
Yeah, yeah. I was, I think there were four or five that Dave from Avatar sent me, and I like the F70 a lot. But when we plugged in the F25, it just all came together. I mean, that speaker is so perfect for that amp.
Yeah, it is. I was surprised that the bottom was still pretty tight on it too. That
Yeah, I
surprised
was
me a
going to
lot.
mention that. That was my worry. It's got a smaller magnet, which on
Yeah,
the plus side for me and maybe you, that means it's lighter.
yeah.
uh, so I was looking at that small magnet saying, I hope this is the one I like the most. It's not always. Uh, but yeah, the low end is completely solid in there. Maybe if you had a 100-watt Marshall, it would be a different deal. You need more of them, but compared to the F70 or some of the higher wattage ones, if it was being pushed really hard, I don't know. But yeah, in the 20-watt amp, 18-watt amp, it's great.
So that brings me to my next question. Do you design any of your amps around a particular speaker, or do you just sort of, switch them out here and there to find out which one sounds best? Or
Yeah, so for me the process, again, this is typically takes me about 9 months to a year. Not continuous working on it. I'm doing my other amp work, uh, clerical stuff, my least favorite thing, and et cetera, et cetera. But usually through the process, once I've got the amp pretty much, the circuit pretty much where I'm happy with it, and then that kind of means this overall architecture. I'd have that 3-position tone switch, all that stuff is solidified. Then I'll start listening to speakers. And then once I have a speaker I like, then I kind of go through the final process of fine tuning everything, just trying maybe different type of, same value cap, different types of caps, different types of carbon comp resistor, carbon film, some real fine little, sometimes there's no difference. Sometimes it's kind of a surprising night and day difference, but all those little fine things that sort of take it over the line. But that happens again. I've got the amp pretty much done. Find the speaker I feel like works best, and then the polishing. Yeah.
got you. So tell me about the the high low volume taper toggle. How does that work?
Yeah, so that came about. Sometimes things come about because I don't just use the amp at our shop, which has got really high ceilings, or in my little local bands that I play in, but I'll bring them home. So many of our customers are at home players.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll bring it home, and then often at home you find, well, with a drummer, everything's fine. At home, you want to change these little things. So that high-low came about conceptually just because the way in high, the volume comes on really fast, which is
Yeah.
not unusual in a lot of amps. But at home, it can be kind of, especially if it's quiet, you don't have a lot of room right there before it's too loud, especially if you want to hit the strings loud or hard, or you want to have some overdrive pedals that are above unity, pushing the amp a bit for the fun of it. So I thought, wow, if there's a way to kind of taper it down so I have two gain structures in that volume control, that would be really handy at home.
Hmm.
So that was the idea. There were a lot of iterations of that, but finally, what's going on in the amp is the volume control signal comes in, you go through a gain stage, the tones, a volume control. When it's in high, it goes on from there to the EF86 now. When you go into low, there's a partial master volume after the EF86. Now, it's not a full master volume. You're not turning the EF86 output to the power section off. You're just knocking it down 25%, down to 25. So now, and it tracks with the volume control. I mean, it's part of the volume control. So anyway, it's essentially just putting in this partial master volume after the 86. So it's the amp's not driving the power tubes. The benefit turned out to be that it really changes the proportion of sonic drive to the 86. So in other words,
Yeah. Yeah.
let's say you're at a certain volume level, on high, the EF86 is getting a certain amount of drive to get that output level at the end. In
Yeah.
low, the 86 is getting hit a lot harder because remember, it's being turned down after the 86 to get that same volume in the room, which I wasn't thinking this from the start, but has turned out to really change the sort of flavor and the feel of the way the amp reacts.
Yeah.
So it's like having I don't know, how the amp feels so important, but it's two different feels in there.
Yeah, yeah, it is. That's something that I noticed too. And that's something that's pretty cool. I don't know if I've seen that in any other amps, so I think it's a pretty cool design. Is that something that you're doing on your other amps too?
No, this is the first time, and
Yeah.
ideally we learn as we go along and pick up tricks.
Yeah.
Our earliest amps started in 1998. One of the ones from '99 called the Rambler is still a great seller for us, perennial hit. And that's a pretty simple amp. But along the years, I've found all kinds of tricks, and I try to bring that knowledge along with every new amp. So perhaps it'll be in a future amp. New
Ah, gotcha. Gotcha.
because it works so well. I
Yeah,
find
that's
that
good.
it's really good. Or even live, it just gives you a different vibe.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me about the attenuator and how that works.
In the attenuator, wow, you're hitting all the good things. The attenuator, back in 2002, I can't give you a straight answer, I guess. Back in 2002,
That's all right.
one of our good dealers called Wilco Guitars, I was talking to a fellow Eric there, saying, "Hey, what do you think people would want?" I was looking for what to do next, and he suggested a lower power amp. He was just saying a low power full featured amp, which didn't really exist at the time.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was the beginning of the original Mercury, and that was the first time we had a built-in attenuator, so that you could drive the power tubes and get power tube distortion at home levels. And that was another one where that amp initially, the attenuator went down to a half watt.
Yeah.
And at our shop, we're like, "Oh, this is super quiet." I brought it home, and half watt was loud. So I
Yeah.
said, one more setting. It ended up being 1/100th watt is the lowest one. But that's a great home, like full distortion sound from power tubes.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're obviously not driving the the speaker much at all, but man, you're still getting the goodies though. Sounds
right from
great,
the
feels
power
great.
section.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is such a difference. There are people who do preamp overdrive really well, but I've more focused on the power tube overdrive
Yeah.
attenuator. So some variety. People want to have different things. But that was the first amp where we used the attenuator, and it was so popular. We pretty much put them in everything we do now, some type of attenuator, and we've refined that circuit over and over. And now having the variable attenuator is really nice. You just dial it in.
Yeah, yeah. Have you thought about doing a standalone attenuator?
You know, people ask about that. The one of the advantages we have, or it might be the biggest advantage with our attenuator is we know exactly what it's going with. We know how much power it has to dissipate. We don't have to make one that can handle 50 or 100 watts, and then when you use it with your 10-watt amp, it doesn't sound so great. So
Great,
no,
great.
I haven't really. I just I like what we're doing, and it really, really allows us to dial it in and make it sound as transparent as possible, since we're working with our own output section.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense too. I never really thought of it that way, but yeah, I'm sure that you can sort of custom tailor it to whatever amp you're building. So tone is
Also,
optimized.
yeah, that's it's exactly that. And two, because these amps are a little lower power to start with, your choice of components is a lot greater than if you were aiming at 50 or 100 watts.
Right,
So
right,
it can
got
be a little more tweaky with the sounds of each, which resistor,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it'll drive you crazy.
So how many amps have you built now? I mean, how many amps how many car amps have you built?
We were
How much
talking
amount?
about that at the shop the other day, and our best guess is altogether there have been 20 different models,
20? Okay.
20 altogether. But I think right now we have 9 active models that we're producing, and I'm guessing, gosh, we may have made it could be close to 10,000 amps. It's a real shock.
Wow,
Right?
unbelievable.
Over that 25 years, we've been doing it 25
Yeah.
years.
And how many people do you have working for you now?
Right now, about 13, and that's varied. We've got, I think it's 7 full time, and the rest are part time.
Oh, that's great. So do you do any pedals or anything, or have you done any pedals in the past?
Have thought about it, have dabbled at one point, and I think it was around 2011 we made these large tube pedals. They were
Yeah.
about this big. I think we produced 25 in total. And those were pretty neat. They had 5 tubes each. We had a analog delay that we made that was in there, but they were just so labor intensive. It was almost like building 2 amps per pedal, and you can't really charge the price of 2 amps.
Yeah.
So not doing that. As far as small solid state pedals, maybe one day, but not. I like pedals. It just seems like such a different market and different beast
I
to what
got
we're
it.
set to do. We have large components. We're not used to little tiny things.
No, no, I understand. And you told me it's got, what, 4 or 5 different tubes. I'm thinking, man, it's got to be expensive.
Oh, that
So,
one,
did
I
you
think
sell 'em?
so. Well, we sold, like I say, about 25 of them worldwide, which is not a lot. And I think they retailed for $12.50, which is a
Jeez.
lot. But we were putting $500 in each box
Yeah.
we shipped out because that's how much we're losing. Well, I mean, it took us a little while to discover that, but
So it sounds like it's more of a preamp pedal than as opposed to.
yeah, yeah. Those, what did they have? They had a clean boost with tone controls. There was a pitch shifting tremolo. There was a headphone amp, and then one of them had a reverb circuit with an actual reverb tank, and the other one you had 2 choices. There was that or the one with the analog delay. They sound great, but it's just not practical.
Yeah, I may have to look for some of the stuff. I'm sure they're collectible, huh? Or they will be at some point, maybe.
Probably so. Electromotive was the name of the pedals. The Carr Electromotive. You can see if you can find one out there. The orange one was the reverb one, and the gray one is the analog delay.
Yeah, I gotta check that out. Definitely. So out of all of your amps, what's your favorite, Steve?
People ask me that over the years, and the real answer I'm sorry, the real answer is the most recent one.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah, because it's the one I've spent all the time with. So yeah, I love the Bel-Ray.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Every one we produced, though, I truly loved and felt like they were a great amp and a great value, or we wouldn't have released them.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'll tell you, the Bel-Ray is a great amp. Good luck with it. I'm sure that it's going to sell pretty well. I don't want to take up any more of your time today, but thanks for coming on with me. I really appreciate it, and gave me some really good inside information. And I'm going to post this video pretty soon and give the viewers a little bit more insight too. So, thanks again, and good luck with the Bel-Ray. Awesome amp, and can't wait to see what you come up with next.
Yeah, thanks. I'm already thinking of some. I tell you what, after all these years of doing this, I feel like I want to think of more and more, almost comical is the wrong way to say it, but a little bit off the wall ideas. There's so many
Why not?
regular amps you can get. Now it's time to have some fun and think of a little bit oddball, but always useful and always offering value, but other sounds. So thanks for that. I'm thinking right now.
Yeah. One more question for you, and I should have asked this earlier. Do you get any custom orders, and do you do any custom work?
We don't do any custom circuitry work, but we offer all kinds of custom colors, in the
Okay.
covering of the amp.
So you don't do any one-off builds, for.
You know, it's so difficult to do that. I think it's very easy for folks to say, hey, can you take this and add reverb? Can you take this and add tremolo? Can you take this and add distortion? And to say that sounds very simple, but to start building it and then make everything work together in the best way you possibly can takes a long time. It's just not a matter of throwing an onion in there or something.
Yeah.
So I think when I started out, I tried to do some of that and I just discovered it. I thought it was going to take me 2 hours, but it took me 3 weeks of prototyping to get it just right. And now what can I charge,
Yeah.
So it's better. I found it's better to make the best possible stock amp and just go from there.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Get a pedal to do that thing you want to do.
Got it. All right, man. Well, thanks again for your time today. I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon, and I'll contact you about getting the amp back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And it's really fun to talk, and I'm excited to check out the your YouTube page and see some of the other interviews too.
Yeah. You're gonna see some of that stuff real soon. I got a lot of editing to do, and I got NAMM coming up, so I don't know when I'm gonna get this stuff done. It's always so
Wow.
busy, and of course, you'll see the review of the Bel-Ray and Vintage Guitar Magazine, pretty soon as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Thanks.
See you later.
All right, take it easy. Bye.
Bye.